path to today's message started for me in 1980 in the suburbs of northern Philadelphia. It was one summer day while I was playing outside. My next door neighbor, Tanisha, was not allowed to come outside when her parents were at home, so she would stay in the back window and play with us through the window. On this particular day, I remember very clearly, she said, oh my God, come here, there's a song coming on the radio and you're gonna love it. I don't really remember anybody telling me I had to hear a song on the radio before that particular day. The song was Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang. I had never heard anything like it before, and little 6-year-old me was hooked. So if you don't know, Rapper's Delight is credited as the first rap song ever to be mass distributed to the world. It was born from a group called the Sugar Hill Gang in New York City, and in 1980 in the suburbs of Philadelphia, it made it to the radio. And I became a serious fan of rap that day as a 6-year-old. Because I was 6 and rap has now grown up and just celebrated anniversaries. They just had the Sugar Hill Gang at the BET Awards and the Grammys last year. I feel like I've kind of traveled the path of the art form. It's an art form. So that brings us to the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl halftime show. The artist Kendrick Lamar, who is now pretty much undisputed the heavyweight champion of the rap world. And I'm going to share with you some thoughts about what I experienced during the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl show. Just out of curiosity, does anyone here know who Kendrick Lamar is? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So just so you have a little more background about who Kendrick Lamar is, about 10 days ago, nope, 1 week ago, 2 weeks ago was the Grammys. 2 weeks ago was the Grammys. At the Grammy Awards, Kendrick Lamar won 5 Grammys at the last Grammy Awards. One of the reasons why I say he's the undisputed king of the art form. I plan to have your total list of all of his accolades and everything to fully edify you, but there's this wonderful resource called Wikipedia that has a lot of details about all the things that he's done. Very accomplished, but this is more important about him as a rapper. He won the Pulitzer Prize in Music for one of his rap compositions, thus furthering his title as the undisputed champion of the art form. This past Sunday, he had the privilege of performing the halftime show at the Super Bowl, which is the largest stage in America, and it was the largest audience for that stage in the history of the stage. There was 133.5 million people that turned in for the show, 100,000 more than that watched Michael Jackson perform in the early 1990s. Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl performance was more than just a halftime show. Let me give you a little bit more background. So Kendrick Lamar is currently wrapping up a big beef battle. He was having a musical battle with another very prominent musical artist named Drake. And it started this summer. You guys know who Drake is? Okay. So Drake, for some reason, decided to release a song, and he said some negative things about Kendrick Lamar this summer. And that's what started all of this off in May. They released song and song back and forth twice. And then in that second go-round, instead of releasing one song, in 3 consecutive days, Kendrick Lamar released 3 songs back to back to back. One of those songs became the club anthem of the summer, Not Like Us. It's responsible for the 5 Grammys that he took home. And that song itself is the first song. There's been lots of what they call diss tracks, where you're dissing another person, that have gone on throughout the years, but none of them have won any awards. This is the first diss song to ever win an award. As an artist, I thought it was extremely interesting that out of this beef, he also dropped an entire album that was kind of centered around this conversation after the tracks that I've already mentioned to you. That album was called GNX. The success of his single, Not Like Us, and GNX got us to him being invited to perform at the Super Bowl show this summer. And everybody that's a big fan of rap and a big fan of the culture wanted to see what he was going to do to close the door on Drake and this summer battle. Some of us know that he's a very conscious person and knew there would be more, but there was so much more. So Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl performance, it was more than just a halftime show. It was a statement, a powerful display of artistry, symbolism, and it was full of deeper meaning. The goal of this breakdown is to help everyone understand why the performance was so powerful. Can we get the first slide? The first image that appears is the stadium in a red light. This is a direct reference to the ongoing Drake and Kendrick beef. At one point during their beef, Drake posted a picture suggesting that he was going to push the red button. And if you know, you push the red button, that's like the end all, that's the big explosion, the nuclear option. So he posted a picture on his Instagram. That's the picture there, the red button. So the symbolism is that Kendrick Lamar turns a Superdome into a red button, thus saying this is the nuclear option. And for those who are paying attention, there's something in store because there's something nuclear behind that red button. Kendrick flipped the idea of making the entire stadium look like a red button, signaling that he was declaring the battle over. However, it's important to note that this performance was about more than just Drake. Drake was merely a symbol Kendrick used to convey a broader message, which would become clearer as the performance progressed. The stage design incorporated imagery from video games. If you're familiar with the PlayStation controller, which is there at the bottom, the stage mimicked a PlayStation controller with the triangle, circle, square, and X lighting up before the performance. And if you're really into gaming, the sequence of the controller buttons that happen, there's a game called Grand Theft Auto. And in Grand Theft Auto, there are cheat codes that you can put in. And the buttons corresponded to a cheat code for unlimited life and immortality. So in the concept of the game symbolism, he gave himself unlimited life and immortality before he went into this sequence. And then the next thing that happens is that Samuel Adams gave everybody free beer. Samuel L. Jackson, serving as the voice of Uncle Sam, introduced this next segment as the Great American Game. A play on words. We're watching football. It's the Super Bowl. Is that the Great American Game that he's speaking of? Now, it's very important that he picked Samuel L. Jackson because I don't know if you guys know this about Samuel L. Jackson, and you're probably not going to be able to read it here. But Samuel L. Jackson in 1964, I believe it was an usher at Martin Luther King Jr.'s funeral. 68, thank you. 1968, he was an usher at Martin Luther King Jr.'s funeral. He was a major civil rights activist during the 60s, which is one of the reasons why he was an usher at the funeral. He was responsible for sitting at his college when he was in college. They held the Board of Trustees for 3 days, board beware, demanding changes. But Samuel L. Jackson also did something else that you may be familiar with. He played this character, Stephen. Stephen is from a movie called Django. Django was a movie that, what's that gentleman's name? Leonardo DiCaprio. Leonardo DiCaprio, very big movie. Stephen is a big symbolism as it relates to Samuel L. Jackson's past, Stephen, and this image that he gives us as Uncle Sam. It's also important that only people that know Kendrick Lamar's discography will also know that he has his first album, To Pimp a Butterfly. There's a sequence where he uses Uncle Sam as a narrative tool to explore the themes of race, capitalism, and power in America. So here, Uncle Sam is setting up that Kendrick has to play the Great American Game as a black man. And he's also controlling and directing Kendrick Lamar as to what he's to do and how he's supposed to play the game. Kendrick made a bold choice by opening with an unreleased song instead of one of his greatest hits. It's more of a poem that he speaks. This alone was a statement. On the center of the stage, a car, a GNX, it holds special symbolism from him. It was only produced in 1 year, the year that he was born. Months before he dropped his album, he spoke about how it represents authenticity, about uniqueness, about being very rare, one of one. This theme of authenticity ran throughout his performance, emphasizing that Kendrick is not willing to conform to the industry's expectations or to play the game the way others want him to play it. Symbolism was everywhere. Dancers poured out of the car, continually poured out of the car. Clearly, there was a line to some channel below the car. The dancers were initially dressed in red, white, and blue, representing the American flag, but each color remained separated. This foreshadowed the theme of division in America, which would become even more apparent later in the performance. After the finishing song, Samuel L. Jackson returned with a critique that mirrored the real-life reactions of way too many people, because Samuel L. Jackson came out and said, "You're being too loud, too reckless, too ghetto." And there's a lot of those comments across the social media after the performance was over. This was a satirical jab at how Main Street America often polices black artistry and their expression, and it was dead center and on point. The game theme continues. America is presented as a rigged system, one that Kendrick, as a black man, was expected to navigate carefully. As Jackson told him, "Tighten up." A sign in the stands read the wrong way. If you're into gaming, when you're playing a game and you reach a border, it'll tell you the wrong way. Typically in a game, when you get the wrong way sign, if you continue, you're gonna die, or your character will be reset and sent back to the beginning of the game. The performance was filled with callbacks to Kendrick's past. There was a street lamp with a gentleman standing at the top of the street lamp, laying on the top of the street lamp, with 11 individuals surrounding Kendrick at the bottom. The street lamp imagery represents both the All Right music video and the commercial for his label, PG Lang. The stage also displayed a Stage 1 sign aligning with the video game theme as he transitions into his next song, DNA, which is about heritage and identity. And I think that's personally my favorite song that Kendrick Lamar has ever released prior to Not Like Us, just because of its correlation to stomping on Drake's head, and I just enjoyed that a great deal. At this point, the crowd chanted, "Wrong way," a message that appears in the video game when a player is going in the wrong direction. Then came Euphoria, a song central to the Drake beef. The wrong way warning was reflecting this. By industry standards, Kendrick shouldn't be performing a diss track at the Super Bowl, but he did. And he walked down the field while performing it, mirroring the walking down reference in the song, a metaphor for defeating an opponent. His facial expression remained complex, a poker face that would later take on even greater significance. And there's a line in the song where he says the term poker face, and instead of it being a blank face, when he says that song, he smiles. And it's going to come into play later because the smile is held for just a second as he says the line poker face, thus to me intoning that that is his poker face, the smile. Kendrick then performed Man in the Garden, a song about self-affirmation, a crucial part of his message. He has often spoken about how many black men struggle to express themselves and how he feels a responsibility to give them a voice through his music. The performance emphasized that this wasn't just entertainment, it was something much bigger. At this point, Samuel L. Jackson returns, and he says something very interesting to me, because I told you he's standing under a streetlight with 11 guys around him. They're all wearing white, and they all have in gold grills. I'm not sure what the gold grills and the all-white metaphor has to do, but this is what Samuel L. Jackson says.
Oh, see, you brought your homeboys with you. The old culture cheat code. Scorekeeper, deduct one life.
He says, cultural cheat code. Before he says that, he says, you have your buddies with you. Cultural cheat code, community, unity, coming together. Because they had come together, he said, Samuel L. Jackson, scorekeeper, deduct one life. Because it's a game. Now, some people might have thought that they were talking about Drake or whatever, but I started thinking about people like Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X. When there's too much unity, the scorekeeper deducts one life. Again, the video game theme has been reinforced. Kendrick had lost a life. If he was playing the video game, he lost a life. If you play video games, the lives are very important. He then moved to a different button on the PlayStation controller, pressing the audience's buttons, both literally and figuratively. And something I didn't put in here, but I'm just going to take the time to share with you that I noticed. It's clearly a video game, and all the players on the stage in the different colors are on all the different buttons of the game throughout the game. But it's also clear that they can't see that they're in a game. They can't see what buttons they're standing on. They can't tell where they're standing in the controller. And if you go back and look at that picture, inside of the controller is a prison yard. The prison industrial complex is inside of the video game buttons. So there's multiple imageries going on as to where the game is and what the control is about. The climax of the performance was Not Like Us, the most highly anticipated song of the night, and I'm keep taking detours, because right before the Super Bowl, Drake and his lawyers sent out a bunch of letters and a bunch of threats saying that it was defamation because he actually directly calls Drake a pedophile in the song. They said it's defamation. If he performs the song, there'll be legal repercussions. There was intense speculation in media outlets that the NFL would not let them perform the song because of their being on the hook for the defamation if Drake turns out not to be a pedophile. It's very serious stuff, but Kendrick in part is saying that he's telling the truth. And he plays the song. And back to the smile. And when he plays the song, he says Drake's name. And again, for just 1 second beat, when he says Drake's name, he puts on that poker face smile, which then becomes very important, because the smile is the poker face. You smile in their face while you're doing whatever. Before launching into Not Like Us, Kendrick declared, it's a cultural divide. I'm gonna get it on the floor. 40 acres and a mule, it's bigger than the music. This was a direct reference to reparations, tying into themes from his album To Pimp a Butterfly. The crowd erupted. This was a very popular song. Have any of you heard Not Like Us? 1, 2, 3. You got to go into your Pandora, Apple Music, YouTube, wherever it is that you get your music and listen to it. It's a wonderful experience. And even if you hate it, do it for me. It's my birthday. This part of the show was visually illustrated unity. All of the colors mixed and came together during this part of the show. The imagery is that he brought everybody together. That's what I took away from it, that he was bringing everybody together. He did bring everybody together. The best part is the 80,000 people in that stadium sang in unison a very important part of the song. And I just know Drake that was very much in his feelings. It was and there was probably about 100 million people around the world singing along. So it was, in terms of a beef and a battle and having that going on, there was a lot. But what I found so interesting is that he found this popular culture moment, and he took the time to weave in so many images and so much artistry to convey messages that have nothing to do with Drake or become double entendres as they relate to Drake, that it allowed him to get away with it. Because it's the largest stage when, in fact, the President of the United States, who was dichotomically opposed to most of the things that he's expressing, was sitting in the room, missing all of the messages, but having to see them nonetheless. One of the biggest surprises was Serena Williams appearing on the stage. Serena was raised in Compton, And just like Kendrick, she symbolizes black excellence and black resilience. It's also a jab at Drake because Serena and Drake used to have a relationship about 10 years ago, and he's been a little disrespectful to her a couple of times in the recent past. But it was more significantly an act of Serena's own defiance, because I don't know if you guys remember the Paris Olympics, but at the Paris Olympics, in celebration of one of her victories, Serena Williams did the Crip Walk. It's a little dance that's very popular. It's attributed to gang culture, but that's just a little bit of historical ignorance, because the Crip Walk is actually, there's a video on my Facebook page if you want to take the time and find it. It's attributed to a gentleman whose name should be in my sermon, who was a double amputee. He only had one arm and one leg. And he was a dancer. And he danced in that particular fashion. And it's a tribute to disability excellence, to black excellence. And although it has been co-opted in part by gang culture, that's not where it originated. But she took a lot of flack for doing it at the Paris Olympics, and it was her way of taking her voice back and claiming that she can still do it her own way and doing the dance again on the largest stage in the country. She didn't play the game a certain way. Very important imagery. And in the final song, TV Off, it tied everything together. Early in the performance, Kendrick had rapped, "The revolution will be televised." That's one of the clips that I wanted to play for you guys. At the very beginning of his performance, Kendrick Lamar stated to the audience, at the very beginning, he said, "You picked the right time, but the wrong guy. The revolution will be televised." And that's how his performance began at the Super Bowl. But to close it, he sang a song called TV Off, and the lyrics literally repeat in the hook, TV Off. And as he closed the performance, he had a remote in his hand, and he clicked his remote on the camera, and the lights on the stage went down. He turned the TV off. He ended the beef and the battle and the message, and in the stands behind him, the lights read, "Game over." Ultimately, this performance was about black identity and the struggle against systemic oppression. Kendrick made it clear that he refuses to conform, whether in his setlist choices, his willingness to rap at the Super Bowl, or his decision to embrace black culture unapologetically. I saw one post that said, "Hundreds of dancers on stage and not a white dancer to represent." And somebody responded, "We ended DEI and objectively the black dancers were better." It was a very funny post. Kendrick Lamar's, I read that to you already, sorry. Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl performance was more than just a display of musical mastery. It was an embodiment of resistance, truth-telling, and the power of art to challenge systemic injustice. In many ways, his show aligns with the 8 Unitarian Universalist principles, which call for justice, equity, and the inherent worth and dignity of all people. His refusal to conform to industry expectations reflects the first principle, affirming the worth and dignity of every person. By centering black identity and culture on one of the world's biggest stages, Kendrick asserted the right to be seen and heard, rejecting the forces that often seek to erase or dilute or marginalize the voice. The second principle, which calls for justice, equality, and compassion in human relations, was at the heart of Kendrick's message. His performance highlighted the ongoing struggle of black Americans against a system designed to suppress them. From his nod to the 40 acres and a mule promise, an unfulfilled pledge of reparations, to his visual storytelling of division and unity, Kendrick used the stage to shine a light on systemic injustice while also celebrating black resilience. He challenged the idea that success must come at the cost of authenticity, showing that staying true to one's roots is a revolutionary act. His emphasis on unity and collective strength ties into the third principle, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth. Kendrick's imagery of Bloods and Crips uniting, as well as his reference to the pop-out event that brought Los Angeles this community together. This summer, as part of this thing, on Juneteenth, Kendrick Lamar hosted 100 different organizations, Bloods, Crips, in a pop-out event in Inglewood, California, and they all came on stage together in a symbol of unity. His decision to perform Not Like Us, despite legal and corporate pressures, was an act of defiance, an assertion that true democracy means the ability to speak truth to power, even in the most public of arenas. Perhaps most significantly, Kendrick's show aligned with the 8th principle, which calls for dismantling racism and other systems of oppression. His entire set was a masterclass in using art to expose and challenge structural inequalities. By framing his journey as a rigged game, Kendrick made it clear that Black Americans are still forced to navigate an unfair system. And yet, through his persistence, talent, and unwavering commitment to his message, he showed that the fight against oppression is not just necessary, but winnable. In the end, Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl performance was a sermon in its own right, one that challenged viewers to reflect on their role in a society where injustice still thrives. Like the UU faith, his artistry calls for courage, reflection, and action. His performance was a reminder that real change requires both resistance and unity, and that, as the 7th principle teaches us, we are all interconnected. His message wasn't just about the music, Black identity, or even America. It was about all of us and the kind of world we choose to create. Ashe, namaste, and blessed be.